Oh heavens! The fish float white in the lake, the land is parched, a storm arrives and vanishes. The peace beside Lake Victoria shattered in an instant. Panic spread among the villagers, their eyes fixed on Amara, Zalira, and Makena, the three once praised as the women of healing. They had only wished for a quiet life, sowing seeds and selling fruit. But now, everyone looked to them as the key to a dreadful secret. Then, on a moonlit night, the lake suddenly parted, revealing an enchanting figure. A mermaid with radiant golden scales, tears brimming in her eyes. Raising her voice in warning of an ancient curse about to sweep away the entire town, silence fell over all. And for Amara, the most terrifying thing was not the curse itself, but the fact that little Makena, her own child, was at its very center. Would you dare to leave when the truth is about to be unveiled? The night moon poured over Lake Victoria like a silver veil covering the water's surface, so still it seemed one could read the very breaths of the people standing at the shore. The small town, once accustomed to gentle evenings, suddenly suffocated in silence. No children's laughter, no pounding of mortars crushing corn, only bewildered eyes fixed on the lake where something awaited to take shape. And then it came. A soft glow spread from the depths, not blinding but chilling, like an ancient gaze watching. The water broke apart in rippling waves. People stumbled back, baskets clattered onto the ground. A few children cried out, only to have their mouths quickly covered. From the heart of the lake, a figure rose, slow, beautiful, and terrifying like a dream no one dared believe real. The mermaid. Her golden tail split the waves, each scale reflecting moonlight like fragments of crushed gold. Her skin glowed, her eyes vast as though they held the entire ocean. In them lay unspeakable sorrow, but also the sternness of one bearing judgment. Without her lips moving, her voice rang in every mind, not sound, but a torrent of thought crashing in, each word etched with clarity. She spoke of a curse, that the children blessed by the deep sea would carry within them two currents, light and darkness. If loved, the light would make the land bloom, tame the beasts, and grant people peace and prosperity. But if hatred took root, darkness would awaken, rising into a wrath capable of drowning villages. Her voice struck like drumbeats against their hearts, sending shivers through the crowd. And then she spoke the words that left the town breathless. The curse was awakening in Makena. The air erupted. Whispers broke out like a hive of bees disturbed. Some stepped back, as though the very breath of that child might summon calamity. Some covered their faces, some shook their heads, and a few could not help but mutter, "It is not human." Panic spread faster than fire. Years of affection and admiration now turned into doubt and fear. Makena shrank behind Amara, sweat-damp hair clinging to her face, eyes wide in confusion, not yet grasping what was happening. She was still only a child, her greatest fear before now no bigger than a bad dream. Yet here she stood, the entire town staring at her as though she were a threat. Amara stepped forward, her slender frame steady as an ancient tree. She placed herself before Makena, as she had since the first day she carried the seaweed-wrapped infant home. She knew the past never truly slept. She knew the water never forgot. But to see the child branded as monstrous by the crowd made her heart ache. Her eyes, though weary, shone with uncommon light, the gaze of a mother who does not retreat. Zalira, now a young woman, gripped Makena's hand tightly. Her heart quivered with the weight of memory. She remembered herself at 15, remembered the shell whose glow went dark, remembered a fate that almost dragged her into shadow. But Makena was not like her. Makena was a child of love and freedom. Zalira believed it was that very essence that would keep the light burning within her. The mermaid on the lake gazed down at the scene. For a moment, her eyes softened, as if witnessing something familiar. But at once the sternness returned. Her voice thundered again. None of you can hide forever. When the curse awakens, only it can choose the light or the darkness. Her words cut into hearts like a blade. Then, slowly, she sank beneath the surface, her radiant form dissolving into the dark water, leaving the lake as flat as though nothing had ever happened. Yet the silence was no longer peaceful. It was heavy, dense, laden with omens that could not be cast away. The townsfolk dispersed, but their glances were different now. They no longer looked at Amara and the two girls as healers. They looked with caution, with a silent fear. And fear, Amara knew, was always the thing that could kill love faster than any wave. She lifted her gaze to the moon. The moon still shone, the lake still stilled, but the world had changed. Peace was over. The true trial was only beginning. So then, my dear audience, stay tuned for the next chapter that will leave you in awe. Take a moment to like the video and subscribe only if you truly resonate with what I am bringing here, and leave a comment below telling me where you are watching from and what time it is for you. It is always a joy to see someone joining us from across the world. Nights on Lake Victoria were usually as gentle as a lullaby of the earth and sky, but inside Amara's small hut, some nights suddenly became strangely enchanted. Whenever Makena began to sing, even in her sleep, the space around her seemed to be illuminated. The moonlight outside could not compare to the soft blue glow spreading from the girl's body, as light as the breath of water filling the hut. Passers-by sometimes thought they saw will-o'-the-wisps, but in truth, it was only a little girl dreaming and singing with her whole heart. Makena grew as swiftly as grass after the rain. Each day, Amara noticed her daughter a little taller, her laughter clearer, her steps more carefree. Yet what worried and amazed her most was that strange singing voice. It was pure, rippling like a stream, and whenever it rose, the animals would gather, murmuring. The fish in the lake leapt together, and the wild flowers by the shore bloomed as though in greeting. The sight left the villagers half believing, half doubting. Some laughed, saying, "The child must have eaten too much honey," but others whispered that Makena carried a power no one dared to name. As she grew older, Makena began to sense something hidden behind her voice. It was not only joy. Each time she sang, she felt as if an invisible hand seized her heart, pulling it toward a depth she had never known. It was a calling both distant and familiar, sweet yet frightening, leaving her stunned after every song. Amara often woke in the night, sitting by her daughter's bed, watching the blue light saturate the hut, her heart trembling yet warmed. Sometimes she laughed to herself, "At least I don't need an oil lamp anymore." But her gaze would then sink, for she knew that every miracle carried a price. That price would, sooner or later, demand Makena to pay. Zalira could not laugh. Each time she watched her sister sing in unconsciousness, she remembered her own 15th year, the night the shell's glow went dark, the night destiny called her name. She knew that feeling well, as if the sky tilted, as if the ocean pressed down upon her shoulders. Zalira feared for her, but unlike before, this time she did not want Makena to live in fear. She and their mother chose to raise her with love and freedom, believing that very choice might keep her safe from the darkness. The town, however, began to take notice. Those who once called Amara and her two daughters healers now mingled admiration with suspicion. Some came to buy bananas or cashews, forcing awkward smiles, but their eyes lingered too long on Makena, as if searching for signs to prove she was different. Some village children loved to chase after Makena, for whenever she sang, they were wrapped in an indescribable happiness. Yet some parents pulled their children back, whispering, "Don't get too close." Under those gazes, Makena remained carefree, still smiling, still singing. She did not yet fully understand the curse spoken of by the golden-scaled mermaid. But deep inside, she felt she could not hide who she was. She sang not to prove herself, but because, if she suppressed it, her heart would ache. One afternoon, as the breeze blew softly, Makena sat on a rock by the lake and sang quietly. Soon, little birds gathered, perching on her shoulders, in her hair, in her open palms. A young monkey, curious, sat at her feet, blinking as it listened. Zalira, watching from not far away, found the sight both amusing and moving. She thought softly, if hatred can summon storms, then perhaps love can summon the forest and the lake to befriend us. That evening, Amara watched her two daughters playing, her heart hushed beneath a flood of memories. She recalled that rainy night by the Niger River, when Nyasha placed the newborn in her arms. The words of long ago still echoed, "Raise her with love, do not let her grow in hatred." Amara knew that what was coming would be greater than the fears of an entire village. But she also knew that Makena could not live like a shadow hidden away. The girl had to learn to face herself. And Amara, even if she had to stand against the whole world, would still protect that light to the very end. So as Makena's voice grew stronger, would it become a blessing for the land, or would it summon the darkness everyone feared? Makena's singing had become a tale passed from mouth to mouth, spreading from the shores of Lake Victoria across the region. Salt traders from afar, stopping by the market fair, told of a small town where, when a little girl sang, birds flocked, flowers burst into bloom, and even the fish in the lake danced along the banks. It sounded like myth, but the more it was told, the more people believed. And then, one day, the good word brought a band of unfamiliar merchants. They arrived with thin horses yet laden chests, dressed in colorful garments, their arms jangling with bracelets of gold and silver. They cared nothing for bananas or palm oil. They wanted only one thing, to see Makena sing. In return, they held out treasures the town had never seen before, glittering jade bracelets, heavy silver coins, embroidered cloth threaded with gold. To them, Makena's voice was not a miracle for joyful living, but a luxury to be bought and bartered. Amara refused. She needed no gold, no fame. But her refusal did not drive them away. It only inflamed their ambition. In their eyes, Makena was no longer a child, but a source of power that could bring wealth and dominion. They left with sly smiles, as though Amara's rejection was nothing more than a temporary jest. Everyone knew once greed takes root, it does not fade easily. From that day, the air of the town began to change. People whispered more. On afternoons when storms suddenly rose, someone muttered, "Perhaps it's that voice angering the water spirit." When dead fish washed ashore, others shook their heads. Wasn't this lake once peaceful? Ever since the girl appeared, everything has turned strange. Such whispers were like constant rain soaking into the earth. They needed no proof, only to be planted once, and fear would multiply on its own. Makena still laughed and sang innocently, but Zalira could not look away. She saw admiration mixed with suspicion in the villagers' eyes, saw footsteps veer aside when Makena passed. Once, children had chased after her to hear her sing. Now, many were called back, their parents hiding uneasy glances. Zalira bit her lip, her heart surging, for she knew that once a community begins to doubt, love can easily turn into a burden. Amara understood better than anyone. She had witnessed fear transform gentle friends into strangers. At night, listening to the wind howl outside the hut, she thought of the mermaid's words, "If the light is nurtured with love, the land will flourish. But darkness once fanned will drown all." The worry robbed her of sleep, yet each time she looked at Makena, her resolve hardened. She knew only love was the cord strong enough to hold the girl back from the abyss. Once, as Makena sang by the lakeside, village children still gathered, but instead of cheering, they watched in silence. When the birds and fish rushed toward her, they exchanged glances, their eyes both delighted and unsettled. A boy whispered, "If she can control the fish, what if one day she controls us too?" The innocent words weighed the air down. Adults who overheard quietly pulled their children away. Makena did not hear all of this. She still smiled brightly, hair tangled in the wind, eyes gleaming as shimmering fish circled her. But Zalira stood there, her heart clenched. She understood that sometimes even happiness can plant fear in others' hearts. One night, in the small hut, the soft blue light from Makena's sleep singing spread across the thatched roof. Amara sighed gently, sitting by her side, whispering as if to herself, "At least I don't need an oil lamp anymore." She smiled at the strange convenience, but her eyes still shone with worry. For each time the glow flared brighter, the fear in the villagers outside grew as well. Day by day, the murmurs spread wider from the market fair to the tavern, from the lakeshore to the roots of the great baobab tree. People no longer spoke of harvests or the price of salt, but only whispered about Makena. Could the child be a sign of the divine? Or does she carry a curse from the deep sea? The questions had no answer, yet fear kept growing. Amara knew they stood at a crossroads. Either the community would open its heart to trust in the light, or suspicion would turn Makena into the target of rejection. She looked at her two daughters, and in her heart rose a question she herself had not yet dared to answer. That night, the full moon hung high like a massive silver drum. Lake Victoria gleamed, its rippling waves glittering under the light, murmuring like the whispers of 1,000 voices. The whole town had fallen asleep, leaving only the wind gliding over thatched roofs and the frogs croaking in the reeds. Amara sat at the doorway of her hut, her thin hands clasped together, her eyes gazing into the distance. She had grown accustomed to the unease beating within her heart ever since the first mermaid had appeared. But this time, the wind carried a strange scent, salty and cold, as though foretelling something rising from the depths. And then, from the middle of the lake, the water surged in great waves. A golden light spread out, reflecting across the shores, making even the trees tremble in its glow. People startled awake, one by one rushing to the lakeside, fearful yet unable to look away, and as before she appeared. The mermaid, her radiant golden tail whipping the water, her scales glittering like shards of a shattered sun, her long hair flowing like ribbons of night. But this time, her gaze carried not only sorrow or warning. It shone bright, stern, like one bearing a judgment no one could escape. No one heard her voice with their ears, yet every mind shook as her words rang out. Makena is the chosen child. Her task is to bridge two worlds, humankind and the sea folk. To do so, she must leave this home, descend into the deep sea to learn, to train, and to confront the very roots of her own power. The lakeside fell silent. Only Amara's heart pounded, like a war drum. The decree struck down like a cold blade. From the day she had taken Makena into her arms from Nyasha, she had known a day like this would come, but she had always prayed fate might forget or at least delay. Now, there was no escape. Amara looked down at her daughter. Makena stood there, slender, yet with eyes blazing. She had heard, she understood it all. Her face trembled, yet glowed with light. Her small hands clenched, not from fear, but from resolve. Deep inside, she knew she could not run forever. Zalira, standing beside her, trembled no less. Memories of her 15th year rushed back the night her own shell went dark, the night destiny pressed its weight upon her. She knew how crushing that burden was, yet looking at Makena, she saw something different. In those eyes, there was not only fear, but also the yearning to find herself. The villagers began to murmur. Some nodded, whispering, "So it is true she's the messenger." Others stepped back, muttering, "If she leaves, will calamity follow?" The words pierced Amara's heart, but she did not let herself falter. She stepped forward, standing close to her daughter, as if making a silent vow, "Wherever you go, I will still be your shoulder." The mermaid's face softened at the sight. She raised her hand, and from the depths of the lake, a spiral of light burst forth. Within that glow, images flickered, palaces deep beneath the sea, radiant coral reefs, shadowy corridors that only those belonging to the ocean could tread. The vision was breathtakingly beautiful, yet chillingly perilous. Makena squeezed Zalira's hand, then let go, silently affirming her choice. She took a deep breath, her chest rising, her gaze fixed firmly on the lake. The light in her eyes mirrored the glow radiating from the depths below. Amara's trembling hand reached for her daughter's shoulder, as if to hold her back, then halted. Maternal love tore at her, but she knew no one could lock away a river once it had found the sea. The mermaid's voice rang out again. There is little time left. If she chooses to go, the path will open. If she stays, the darkness will come faster. The words echoed, making hearts pound as though about to burst. Makena stepped toward the lake, her small feet pressing into the wet sand. The crowd held its breath. Waves crashed against the shore as though in welcome. She turned back to look at Amara and Zalira. In their eyes, she saw pain, fear, but also boundless love, and it was that very love that erased her hesitation. A sudden glow flared from the shell she had kept hidden beneath her pillow all these years. It pulsed like a heartbeat, merging with her steps. The crowd shivered, for they understood. Makena had begun a journey from which there was no return. Will Makena find her true strength in the depths of the sea, or will that place swallow her in darkness? If you leave now, you will miss the journey that will decide the fate of both worlds. Can you guess what will happen next? Take a moment, relax, and comment one or I'm still here to keep listening. That night, Lake Victoria was like a massive mirror, reflecting the crimson moon glowing like molten fire. No one noticed when the wind changed direction. They only saw the ripples twisting into circles, deep and heavy, like the breath of a beast awakening from a long slumber. Amara gripped her daughter's hands tightly, her heart pounding, sensing that the past had returned, leaving no way back. From the depths of the lake, 3 figures emerged. They bore none of the gentle, mystical beauty of the golden-scaled mermaid, but instead radiated coldness and malice. Their long black hair tangled wildly, their skin a grayish-green carrying the stench of sorrow from the abyss. Their tails twisted and shimmered, not with radiant gold, but with a steel-gray gleam. Their eyes burned with hatred, as though they sought to set the entire surface ablaze. No words were spoken aloud, yet their voices thundered straight into everyone's minds, echoing like storms in a valley. Zalira, you who betrayed the laws of the sea, your choice of forgiveness back then was a disgrace to the sea folk. You refused vengeance. You let love triumph, and now we return to correct that mistake. Zalira trembled as memories flooded back. The image of her mother, Nyasha, desperate in the betrayal of her own sisters, then vanishing into the waters, leaving Zalira orphaned and taken in by Amara. Her heart tightened. For all these years she had chosen forgiveness, chosen love to save Makena, and yet now that very choice was condemned as sin. The 3 mermaids advanced, their voices merging with the crashing waves, cold and merciless. We will claim Makena. She is the seed of power the deep requires. With her, the laws will be restored. Power will belong to us. Both the world of humans and the sea folk will kneel before the darkness. Whispers rose from the lake shore. Villagers had gathered, trembling at the spectacle before them. They stepped back, afraid to intervene yet unable to turn away. What they saw resembled a tragic play unfolding between myth and reality. Amara took half a step forward, her frail frame standing firm like a fortress. She spoke no word, but her eyes were a vow of iron. Makena would never belong to the darkness. And at that very moment, the golden-scaled mermaid rose from the water, glittering like sunlight falling upon the lake. She stood between Amara and the 3 others, her gaze heavy with sorrow, yet blazing with light. Her voice rang out, steady and unshaken. You are not the only ones who bear the legacy of the sea. I am the last descendant of Nyasha. Zalira's mother is my own flesh and blood. I was sent to protect that heritage and to atone for the sea folks' sins. The entire space fell silent. That revelation left Amara breathless, Zalira stunned, and Makena's eyes widened. In that instant, the child saw not only herself as the center of destiny, but also the threads stretching from her mother, her lineage, and the deep sea binding all the way to her. The three mermaids sneered, their laughter hissing like foam crashing against rocks. "You alone think you can stand against us? You bear the weak blood of one who betrayed. You will die as Nyasha died." The golden-scaled mermaid's eyes blazed bright. She spread her arms wide, and a radiant light enveloped Amara, Zalira, and Makena, forming a shield of brilliance. The waters roared and swirled, foam spraying white. On the shore, the villagers panicked, shaking in fear, yet transfixed by the surreal battle before their eyes. Amara clutched Makena's hand, feeling the trembling in each small finger. She knew this was no longer a matter of her family alone. This was a war between love and hatred, between forgiveness and darkness. And Makena, the child blessed by the deep, was the key to its end. Bathed in the blinding light, Makena lifted her head high. No one told her what to do, but deep within her heart, she knew she could not stand still. Destiny had called her name. The light in her eyes flared not the innocence of a child, but the power waiting to be awakened. The sky over Lake Victoria was still bathed in moonlight, but in an instant, Amara, Zalira, and Makena were swept down into the world beneath where light could no longer reach. The water pressed around them, dense as midnight mist, swirling into great circles. No sound of birds, no wind, no human voices remained, only the deep, resonant echo of an ancient current, like the heartbeat of the ocean itself. The golden-scaled mermaid led the way, her body glowing like a living torch. The light from her tail illuminated the dark stone walls, carved with the marks of ages, cracked reliefs, figures of sacred fish, and strange symbols spiraling around towering pillars. This was the legacy of the sea folk, and the place where Makena would have to face herself. They dove deeper still, passing through vast fissures where black seaweed stretched like arms reaching to seize them. Amara's chest tightened, but she kept hold of Zalira's hand, her determined eyes fixed on Makena ahead. Though she could not speak, she knew it was her small daughter who stood at the very heart of this journey. Makena, only just at the threshold of youth, suddenly bore a destiny beyond imagination. Yet instead of trembling, her eyes shone, clinging to the golden light that guided her. In the whirling water, her voice slipped out, clear as ringing bells. Strangely, the sound did not break under the weight of the sea. It spread outward, resonating through the depths. The waters calmed slightly. Schools of silverfish swarmed near, circling as though to listen more closely. And from the deep, a whisper arose, not of man nor of fish, but of the very spirit of water. It answered Makena's melody, intertwining with hers like a duet never before composed. Makena understood then. Her voice was not meant to summon beasts or astonish people. It was a language of dialogue, of healing. With each note she sang, the cracks in the ancient walls lit up, the carved symbols stirring to life, glowing with a gentle light like a mother's breath, soothing her child to sleep. Amara and Zalira watched, hearts tight. They were filled with pride, yet fear. Pride in seeing Makena grow in this very moment, fear in knowing that no mother's arms could hold a child forever. In the deep, Makena was stepping out of shelter to become herself. The golden-scaled mermaid looked at Makena, her eyes wet yet resolute. She gave a small nod, silent, but enough for Makena to know she was on the right path. But just as the light began to spread, a violent darkness surged. From the deep cracks emerged the three treacherous mermaids again, their grey tails thrashing, their eyes blazing with hatred. Their voices exploded into every mind. "You sing to heal? That power only weakens us. Makena, let the darkness consume you. Only when hatred rises will the deep belong to you." The waters around them darkened, swirling into towering whirlpools. Seaweed tightened like chains, dragging Amara and Zalira away. Amara reached out desperately, but in vain. Her heart clenched as if crushed. Zalira screamed silently, her cry swallowed by the tide. Only Makena remained, standing at the center of the maelstrom on one side, the gentle light of the revived carvings. On the other, the raging darkness swelling higher. She trembled, but did not retreat. She remembered the words her foster mother had whispered for years. Love is the cord that keeps you from the abyss, and she knew she could not let herself become a weapon of hatred. Makena closed her eyes, raised both hands, and began to sing. But this time, the melody was no longer crystal clear. It was deep, soaked in pain and fear, yet brimming with love. Each note was a confession. She was weak, she was uncertain, but she still chose the light. Blue light spread outward, stronger than ever before. The ancient reliefs blazed, illuminating the ocean's heart. The seaweed chains snapped apart, releasing Amara and Zalira. The whirlpools conjured by the three mermaids shattered, forcing them back, shrieking in fury. In that radiance, Makena saw their twisted faces clearly, and for a fleeting moment, she no longer saw them as monsters, but as souls that had once been sisters, once born of the same sea. That truth kept her from choosing vengeance. She chose forgiveness instead. Her final song burst forth, like a drumbeat rising from the ocean floor to the heavens above. The waters stilled, the light encompassed all. Amara clutched her daughters tightly, her tears mingling with the tide, her heart heavy yet unburdened. But was Makena's choice of forgiveness strong enough to keep the darkness from returning, or was it only a pause before an even greater storm? The night sky seemed torn apart by 1,000 blades of light. Thunder roared violently. The wind howled like the cries of some ancient beast. Lake Victoria, once calm, turned into fury, each wave rising like a wall of water ready to swallow everything whole. The townspeople panicked, scattering in chaos, oil lamps crashing to the ground, cries for help merging with the raging wind. In the midst of the turmoil, from the heart of the lake, 3 colossal figures rose, the 3 treacherous mermaids leading an entire legion of dark sea folk. Their tails thrashed violently, creating whirling water columns, the lake's surface steaming as if boiling. This night was not only a storm, it was the return of a darkness from the dawn of time. Makena stood at the shore, her wet hair clinging to her young face. Lightning flashed, and her eyes gleamed, not with fear, but with resolve. Amara and Zalira stood around her, but they knew this time they could not shield her forever. Makena's power had to rise on its own, or all would be swept away by the waves. The dark sea folk stretched out their hands, their voices blending with the storm's howl. The girl is ours. Only when hatred leads the way can power be complete. Waves crashed forward, threatening to erase the entire town. People collapsed to their knees, their eyes wide with terror. In that moment, when everything hung by a thread, Makena drew in a deep breath, her lips parted. And then, the sound rose. No longer the pure song that once summoned fish to dance and birds to gather. This was a hymn, deep and resonant, filled with the breath of earth, of water, and of the love sown across generations. Each note pulsed like a heartbeat, tender yet unyielding, carrying memories of Amara, the foster mother who had cradled her on that fateful stormy night, of Zalira, the sister who trembled, yet always stood beside her, and of Nyasha, whose blood of the sea folk left behind this legacy. The song surged, spreading from Makena's small lips to encompass the entire lake. Light poured from her chest, unfolding into a radiant halo of gold and blue. The waters no longer roared but softened, as if listening. Each ripple reflected the glow, glittering like 1,000 flickering candles. A miracle unfolded. The trees along the shore, battered by the storm, sprouted green shoots within moments. The fish that had floated lifeless on the surface stirred, flicked their tails, splashed foam, and swam in circles around Makena. And the faces of the villagers, once twisted in fear, now lifted, their eyes shimmering with reflected light, as though faith long lost had been restored. The three mermaids shrieked, their tails lashing wildly, but the stronger they fought, the brighter the light grew. They lunged, trying to tear apart the halo, but each time they touched it, Makena's power did not strike back. It only enveloped, dissolving hatred. Her song did not battle with violence. It whispered only one truth. You are not forgotten. You are still loved. And it was that truth that drove them to madness. The villagers fell to their knees along the shore. Some wept not from fear but from awe. They realized that the child they had once doubted, once whispered against and shunned, was the one raising her hand to save the entire town. Amara watched her daughter, tears mingling with the rain, her heart breaking yet bursting with pride. Zalira gripped her hand tightly, trembling in the wave of power, knowing her sister had stepped out of fear's shadow to become her true self. The three mermaids were finally forced to retreat. They writhed and struggled as the light shattered the chains of darkness binding them. Their screams echoed in agony not only from defeat, but from being forced to face the truth that the law of hatred had been broken. One by one, their gray scales peeled away, dissolving into the waves. The storm ended. Lake Victoria lay still, as if it had never raged. The people rose, looking around in shock. What they had witnessed was nothing less than a miracle, a lesson seared into their hearts. Makena collapsed to her knees, but her eyes still blazed. She had sung not with her voice alone, but with a heart filled with love, forgiveness, and the legacy of both worlds. And it was that which darkness could not overcome. My dear audience, stay tuned for the next chapter that will leave you astonished. Take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and leave a comment below telling me where you are watching from and what time it is for you. It is always a joy to see people joining us from every corner of the world. The storm had passed, but its echo still lingered in the air, like a distant murmur refusing to fade. Lake Victoria lay calm once more, its ripples as delicate as a thin ribbon, reflecting the sky cleansed clear by the rain. Droplets of water clung to the leaves, glittering in the moonlight like thousands of tiny jewels scattered hastily by nature to comfort humankind. The villagers, who only moments ago had trembled in fear, now knelt as one, their eyes brimming with tears. They looked upon Amara, Zalira, and Makena, no longer with suspicion, but with reverence. They understood that these three humble souls had just saved an entire land from being drowned in darkness. But Amara did not accept glory. She only smiled faintly, her weathered face softened, her trembling hand clasping the hands of her two daughters. In the light reflected on the lake, she quietly turned, leading her children back to the small hut at the edge of the village. For her, victory was not in defeating enemies, but in seeing Makena choose love over hatred, freedom over chains. That was the greatest gift, the price she had traded a lifetime of sheltering to receive. The villagers wished to follow, but their steps faltered. In their hearts, the image of the three now seemed like something sacred, untouchable. They stood in silence, as though bidding farewell to a pilgrimage leaving the temple. And in that moment, the whole land seemed wrapped in a strange peace, the kind of peace that only comes when people bow their heads before compassion. Inside the hut, the firelight flickered, casting its glow over Makena's weary face. She lay nestled against Amara, her eyes drifting shut after the battle that had left her body trembling. Zalira sat beside her, gazing at her sister's drenched hair, her heart aching with both love and pride. She remembered herself at 15, standing before the boundary of destiny, caught in the whirlpool of hatred. But Makena had gone further. She had not only chosen forgiveness for herself, but dared to sing forgiveness for the very souls that once betrayed. Amara quietly wiped the sweat from her daughter's brow, her wrinkled hand trembling. In her eyes, joy mingled with worry. For she knew the same light that had just saved them was also the torch guiding the way to even greater trials. Once Makena had awakened her power, The sea would surely never let her go. But Amara also knew she could not hold her child in her arms forever. Sometimes the greatest love is the courage to let go, to allow a child to find her own path. Outside, the night was eerily still. The villagers had returned to their homes, yet their gazes toward the lake had changed, not merely fear now, but faith mingled within. They had witnessed a child save the land with a song of love, and they knew this tale would live on as legend. Generations yet unborn would hear that once there was a girl who sang life back into trees and fish, who sang away the storms, who sang to teach people the meaning of forgiveness. In her restless sleep, Makena dreamed of the lake glowing with light. She saw the figure of Nyasha, the mother she had never truly known, smiling gently, standing upon the waves. Beside her was the golden-scaled mermaid, her eyes radiant with pride. And in the distance, faint shadows stirred, as if many stories still untold, many trials still unrevealed. Amara listened to her daughter's soft breathing and whispered, as if speaking only to herself, "Tomorrow will begin as always. I will light the fire, you will sing, and we will live." But I know destiny does not end here. Zalira looked at her mother and nodded softly. She too understood that choosing forgiveness was not the end. It was only a threshold, opening the way to a longer journey, where Makena would have to stand between two worlds to find her place. Outside, the night wind stirred the branches gently, the lake glittering like the watchful eyes of 100 spirits. It was as though the waters themselves sighed in relief after the storm. Yet, within that stillness, something remained, an unseen motion in the depths, a faint echo carried on the wind. Years passed, and the skies over Lake Victoria had witnessed countless seasons of rain and sun. Countless times the waves rose and fell. But for Amara, all those seasons seemed only like notes written into a greater story, the story of love, of forgiveness, and of the children she had raised with her whole heart. Beneath the old baobab tree, its gnarled trunk bearing the marks of centuries, Amara sat, her back now bent with age. Her silver hair fell loosely over her shoulders, yet her eyes still carried the gentle light of a mother's gaze. Before her, Zalira and Makena laughed and played like two young women in the bloom of youth, their clear laughter ringing across the lakeshore, blending with the song of birds in the afternoon. Amara whispered softly, as though speaking to herself, as though sending her words into the waters. "Long ago, I saved a child. But it was those very children who saved me." It was not merely a saying, but the crystallization of an entire life. For she understood, without Zalira, she would never have known how strong love could be. Without Makena, she would never have believed that forgiveness could become a power greater than any weapon. Lake Victoria lay calm, but at times the wind would sweep across its surface, rippling into waves that seemed to hum with a distant song. Villagers told that on certain moonlit nights, they could hear a voice rising from the middle of the lake, not a song to summon or to frighten, but one brimming with love, softening even the most withered of hearts. And they believed it was Makena's voice, carrying a message that wherever there was pain, as long as there was a song of compassion, miracles would appear. Children in the village grew up with stories of the three women beneath the baobab. People called Amara the mother of two worlds, Zalira the daughter of forgiveness, and Makena the voice of light. These titles were not carved in stone nor written in history books, but preserved in the hearts of the people, and that was an eternity that required no ink. Though her age was heavy, Amara still tended her small garden with her own hands. She often chuckled softly whenever she saw Makena watering the plants. For each time the water flowed through her hands, the flowers seemed to flourish twice as much. "I once feared you would carry the darkness," Amara thought, "but instead you brought spring." At times, Zalira looked at her younger sister with eyes both proud and protective, never forgetting that Makena had once stood upon the fragile edge of destiny. And then, on one rare still afternoon, Amara leaned against the baobab trunk, closed her eyes, and listened to the cheerful voices around her. She knew her time was running short, but her heart was at peace. For when she departed, the legacy of love would continue to live on through Makena's song, through Zalira's strong hands, and through the faith rekindled in the hearts of so many. In the village, new legends slowly took shape. They told of a time when darkness sought to swallow everything and a girl sang to save the world. They believed that light still remained, flowing from every heartbeat that knew how to love, every act that knew how to share. And so, the story never ended, it simply continued quietly, like the ceaseless waters of the lake. Amara opened her eyes, smiling at the sight of her two daughters running by the shore. For a fleeting moment, she saw Nyasha Zalira's late mother appear in the golden twilight, nodding in comfort. Amara whispered once more, letting the words become her final heartbeat, blending into the lake. I saved a child, but it was they who saved me. So then, was Makena's song only a legend to be retold by the fireside, or was it the beginning of a new journey where light must once again struggle against darkness? Beneath the old baobab tree, as the evening light fell across the lake, Amara sat quietly, watching the two young women laugh and play by the water's edge. The journey seemed to have ended in peace, yet deep within the currents of the lake, a faint tremor still echoed, as if the sea itself had not let go, as if a new chapter waited to be written. This was no longer just the story of Amara, Zalira, or Makena, but the story of all who believed that love could illuminate the darkness. This tale reminds us that light and darkness dwell within every heart. What matters is not fleeing from the darkness, but choosing to nurture the light no matter how small it may be. It is love, forgiveness, and patience that create miracles, not only to save a land, but also to heal the soul. And now, as night descends, one question remains. Will Makena's voice continue to guide the world toward peace, or does the deep still hold trials yet unseen? Dear audience, if this story has touched your heart, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and share so that more people across America can also find hope in this tale. And most importantly, tell us, do you wish to journey alongside Amara, Zalira, and Makena in part 3 of this legendary saga?